welcome. Our participants are signing on today. We have with us Patrick Findaro, who is the CEO of Visa Franchise Group. My name is Bernie Wolfsdorf. I am the managing partner of the Wolfsdorf Rosenthal immigration law firm with 7 offices. I am in the Los Angeles office today. We had about 250 people register for today's webinar, and I'm just going to give us a minute or two to get people to log in, and then I will get started. The topic for today is direct Eb5. What is the difference between direct? And I'm going to pitch this at all levels. That would be, I will pitch this both at the advanced and the entry level. So I apologize to those of you who are experienced Eb5 practitioners. This is going to include some basic information, but the purpose is to provide you with a framework of how this exactly works. How does direct Eb5 work? And why am I not dealing with the Regional Center program? Well, because the Regional Center program expired on June 30th. I am expecting it to be renewed, but I can't tell you when. It could be weeks. It could even be months. What I'm personally expecting in terms of the Regional Center program is that we will get an extension up until September 30th, during which time Congress will debate a substantive bill. But I am also hopeful, because I know that there is a bill ready, besides the Grassley bill, that could in fact be enacted very soon. There's talk about attaching it to the infrastructure bill or spending bill. But for today's topic, we are going to deal with direct Eb5. I'm going to explain the program, and then Patrick is going to very kindly provide us with some potential Eb5 products. Need to make this clear that while I know Patrick well, I consider him a good friend. Patrick and WR Immigration are in fact separate entities. I encourage everyone to do due diligence before you make any investment. You really need to apply all necessary and required due diligence framework. We are not involved in making the selection in terms of investment because we are not investment advisors. So I'm going to just deal with the law here today. Okay, so a little bit about our firm. We claim to be a top-rated firm. The proof, of course, is in the results. So let's move on. There we have Patrick, managing partner of Visa Franchise, visafranchise.com. I think Patrick is probably the most seasoned guy in the industry today. And he is extremely well established, but he will present separately after me as soon as I've gone through this. Standard legal disclaimer with a typo in there. I should have fixed that, James. This is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, you need to consult with a specialist. Briefly explaining for the beginners what the Eb5 process is. The first thing is to prepare the source of funds, select the appropriate project, file your I-526 petition. The bad news is those are taking 2 to 3 years to adjudicate. Then you land with your green card, and you have a conditional green card. 21 months later, after landing, you get to file your 829, which is the removal of conditions. And it's at this final stage that you have to prove that the jobs were timely created and that the capital was committed, but you need to commit the capital at the time of filing the 526. How long does all of this take, assuming you're not from a backlogged country? Realistically, minimum 5 to 6 years from start to finish. If you're from a backlogged country, you can add as many years as necessary, because currently wait time estimates are running several years for Chinese. India hasn't been hit yet. Vietnam has, but that number, I'm not going to get into any depth on waiting lines today, other than those numbers will change and do change every year. The Chinese waiting line first emerged in 2015 and has been a huge headache for persons born in China. The Vietnam waiting line we're going to talk about has actually moved quite nicely, but currently we have a cutoff of April 2020 for Vietnam, which is really quite reasonable. And the Vietnamese market is getting strong again, together with the Indian market, which has not yet seen the backlog, but will. Why am I talking about that? In this chart, it says in small print underneath the 526, wait for the priority date to become current. And there are those three countries, India, Vietnam, and China, that becomes a significant issue. So why am I talking about Eb5 Direct? I'm talking about Eb5 Direct because there is no regional center filing as of today. I expect this to change within a matter of weeks, but if somebody instructs me to file an Eb5 526 today, I cannot file unless it is a direct Eb5. What is the difference between direct and regional center? There is one critical difference. Direct means 10 full-time jobs, 35 hours a week, full-time employees, US workers, primarily citizens, and US residents. For indirect Eb5, you can use indirect jobs based on economic models. So we don't have 10 actual employees. We basically have an expenditure model that if you spend a certain amount of money, that is deemed to be the equivalent of at least one job. So for obvious reasons, over 95% of Eb5 has been regional center. But that program, which was first started in 1992, has been a temporary program requiring extensions. And we've had 17 or 18, sorry, I lose count. So we've had extensions for over 30 years. Congress went on vacation without extending this year. Has this happened before? Yes. In 2018. How nervous am I about the extension? Well, I'm nervous about everything. But I am convinced that with $10 to $20 billion invested in the Regional Center program, Congress is not going to let this program die. There has been a debate over the Grassley bill. Some people, including myself, feel the Grassley bill does not solve the problems in Eb5. We all support immigration reform. We understand the need to reform the program. That's not the problem. The problem with the Grassley bill is it doesn't provide solutions. All right, let's dive into some Eb5 basics here. Program was created in 1990, 10,000 visas a year, 500,000 investment or $1 million. Well, let's turn it around. It's $1 million reduced to 500,000 if you are in a targeted employment area. You create 10 full-time jobs and the investment has to be sustained. I explained that already, so let's jump on. These are your general requirements. You have to engage in a new commercial enterprise. This is not a word or a phrase. It's important. When you invest in an existing business, it's a completely different framework, and inevitably there will be problems. So one of the reasons I invited Patrick to this is that Patrick specializes in franchise in new businesses. So whenever we have a new commercial enterprise or a new franchise, you're in good shape. If you buy an existing one, well, the job's already there. So where's the job creation? It starts getting complicated. The only exception is if you're buying a troubled business, and in which instance you can save the 10 jobs. But even there, it's problematic. My advice is always start a new business ground up from the beginning. There were no jobs to start off with, and now you can show your 10 full-time US workers 35 hours a week. So very heavy emphasis on a new petition. By the way, we do have a chat column. Those of you who have questions, please keep them short. I'm going to try and get through all of your questions. If not, you can always email me afterwards, bernard@wolfsdorf.com. I'm pretty good with responding to emails, usually within 24 hours. It's my name with the @ and Patrick's email. We gave it out. We'll give it out again.
And Patrick@visafranchise.com.
Well, there we got it. So Patrick@visafranchise.com. Patrick's a good guy. He's works with his brothers, and they are all very knowledgeable in this arena. But again, I always use the word due diligence. Do due diligence, and then when you're done, do more due diligence. Do due diligence on your lawyers. See who you're working with. Check out their track record, and individually make sure that your investment is safe. Because one of the requirements for the EB5 program is the investment must be at risk. You cannot make a passive investment. Everybody wants to get into, pardon me, real estate. Well, real estate is good. I understand that. But where are you creating the 10 jobs? How are you creating 10 full-time jobs from a $500,000 real estate investment? I don't see it, but I want to be open-minded and hope that I'm wrong. I like to be proven wrong. All right. So what else? I-5 26 petitions. I mentioned that we need 10 full-time jobs. The investment has to be at risk. Actually need to go back to this. The investor must also be engaged in the management of the enterprise. So one of the big differences between regional center, where there's limited engagement, for a direct, we do need you more hands-on. We want to show, A, that you are qualified to manage the business, and B, that you are managing the business. So I want to focus on that a little bit. Does this person speak English? They don't speak English, how are they going to manage the business? Are they going to work through a manager, etc., etc., etc.? But we do have a stronger management, hands-on management requirement for the EB5 direct. Moving forward, the current investment amount is $1 million. It's always been $1 million. It was set at $1 million in 1990. What has happened, which is why we're doing this webinar, is that a regional center by the name of Behring, Behring, sued the government on the November 2019 regs, which Trump enacted, increasing the minimum investment amount from 1 million to 1.8, and for regional center and direct TEA down to 500,000, the regs had pushed them to 900,000. So what's the bottom line here? The bottom line is, a month ago, the minimum amount for an EB5 investment was 900,000. Today, the minimum investment amount for EB5 is 500,000. When has it ever happened that a government program reduces the amount of the investment by, what is that, 80%? The bottom line is we have a window of opportunity to file EB5 direct tomorrow or today at 500,000. We don't know how long this is going to last. In fact, you can be sure that the government, either through regulation or statute, is going to push the number back up. Why? How do I know that? Because Ali Mayorkas, our DHS secretary, has already put a statement into the court saying that he feels it should be at the higher amount. They tried to fight to support the Trump regulation, but they lost. They might appeal. How long will the $500,000 last? Nobody knows. Is the $500,000 investment available today? Yes. Will it be available tomorrow? I think so. How about next week? Probably. How about next month? I don't know. How about the month after? Nobody knows. So what I do know is we have a heavily discounted program as of today, which is why I'm doing this webinar. Because there are clients out there and investors out there who want the discounted price. How long will it be available? I've already tried to answer that. Will it be available next year? I doubt it. Will it be available in October? I doubt it. September? Maybe. But we have a narrow window. So if you have investors, I would love to tell them, hold off for the regional center program enactment. But I don't know if they're going to be able to get that at 500. I do know that they can get the direct program at 500,000. There isn't a lot of product available right now. Even talking to Patrick, they've had to put some product together. But since they've been very active in the E2 arena, they pretty much already set up with, and we will hear what he has to offer. I have no idea what Patrick's going to tell us today. So I'm also interested in listening and learning. Targeted employment area. All right, TEA. This is confusing. What does the TEA do? It reduces your investment amount. So I normally say, describe it as a high unemployment area. The rural is quite difficult. You think, oh, we're rural less than 20,000. Well, there's a second leg. It also has to be outside a metropolitan statistical commuting area. So the combination of under 20,000 also requires outside an MSA, and that really limits the number of rural options available. But if you're in a rural, then it's 500,000. And
it's pretty different between the states, right? Like I've seen in Florida for some clients it being pretty easy, where Texas is kind of a pain.
You got it right, Patrick. Basically, one of the things that happened in the November 2019 regulations is the government took away the ability of states and local authorities to determine a TEA. That's been knocked down. So right now, the state of California is back in the business of defining the TEA. They haven't actually retooled yet. They're not officially issuing them. But we have a pretty good idea where the TEAs are. There are good TEA markets. Scratch that. There are good TEA maps we can point you to. Give us the address. Give us the tract, TRACT number, and we can usually tell you whether or not that's a TEA or not. And if you're in a TEA, that means you have a high unemployment rate, 150% of the national average. Your investment amount is 500,000. I normally describe them as bad areas. They're not necessarily that bad. It says submit a letter from the state's agency, and as Patrick correctly pointed out, some states are very good at this, some are not. That's not your problem. Getting the TA letter, I'll connect you with the right people. That's part of our job. We will work on that and resolve that for you. I see questions are coming in. Please keep them short so we can answer all of them. But the bottom line again is to reduce from $1 million down to 500,000, you need to be in a TEA. I mentioned this point, the investment must be at risk. You can't put it in a bank account. You have to deploy it into job creating activities. Must be an equity investment and it must be personal funds. If your corporation makes the investment, there are situations where we can handle loans. We prefer gifts, unsecured loans. I know there's the Zhang case. The Zhang case was our case, but we're still going conservative on this. Invest your own money, or if you're going to use a loan, make sure it's secured by your own personal assets. I already spoke about buying a business or starting a new business. The 10 employees must be W-2 employees and generally should be citizens or permanent residents. Yes, we can take asylees and refugees. No, we cannot take DACA kids. So if I'm doing the Eb5 direct, I want every single I-9. That's the form you complete when you hire someone. I want you to send it to me. I want to verify it's done correctly because I have a friend who filed an Eb5 with 11 people. 2 of them were undocumented and the case was denied. I mentioned the regional center program sunset on June 30th. I think it's going to get extended soon, but I can't say when. The direct program does not expire. It is permanent, and we are open for business today. For that reason, direct is popular as of today. Okay, lawful source of funds. This is a 1-hour topic, so I'm going to keep it short. We prefer business earnings, salary, gifts, secured loans. We like personal tax returns. We like audited financial statements. Nobody has them, of course. But we work with you in terms of preparing the source of funds.
So Bernie, like a secured loan, if someone doesn't want to sell their stock in Apple, they could take a loan against that stock and use it for EB5?
I'm going to basically say I'm not going to give clear answers to any loan situations right now. I'm going to ask you to send in your proposal and we'll have a look at it and study it. My partner, Vivian Zhu, is the guru in this area. Basically, what happened is in the Zhang case, the court said cash is cash, but there is still a negative attitude towards unsecured loans. You're talking about a potentially secured loan on stocks. That's kind of, I'd rather go with a mortgage. What is the value of your stock? If your stock drops below the value of the loan, then we have a problem here. What if your stocks are 1/3 only worth 100,000? They're not adequately secured. So I'm having a problem with that. So I don't want to go into weeds on that, but let's dive into some of the more basic issues. Job creation. I-9s, W-2, tax returns. The big question is when. At the time we file the 526, I do like to have 2 or 3 employees. The way this works, however, is that if you don't have 10 employees at the time you file, you must have a matter of hoe business plan. Matter of hoe business plan is critical. Your case will be denied if you don't submit one. And the bottom line with the matter of hoe business plan is that it shows that the project will have a need for at least 10 minimum employees. But you have to also show the approximate dates of when these employees will be hired. So here's what happens in the real world. You file the 526 petition, the government sits on it for 2 years, they issue an RFE, and then they say, show me the jobs. And you're like, well, wait a second. My guy can't come in with a green card until he's landed. How do you expect him to have the jobs? Well, they're not sympathetic. So their attitude is hire a manager, hire the employees. We don't care that you couldn't come in. So there's the government being mean to us. But I'm telling you, make sure you have those jobs. So the business must describe the current employment levels and the projected new jobs. We need details of the jobs, the job title, job description. I probably won't get into this in too much depth, but for those of you who want to do EB5, read item 13, slide 13. Very, very important. This is another important slide, the characteristics of a direct investment. 100% parent. So if the job creating entity has a parent company and that parent company only owns 70% of the JCE, you've got a problem. So the structure has to be very simple. If you're going to have a parent company, it has to be a 100% owner of the job creating entity. So the new commercial enterprise, let's call it the holding company, has to have 100% ownership of the job creating entity, the entity that actually hires the individuals. Moving on to the advantages. Well, simplicity is definitely there. The regional centers, we've had situations where regional centers have gone bust. We've had situations where regional centers involve fraud. What happened to the poor investor? Well, they got kicked in the pants. That's what happened. How long does it take to set up a regional center? Try a year, year and a half, maybe 2 years. So one of the advantages of direct is simplicity. You basically set up a company, you invest $1 million or $500,000, you hire 10 full-time workers, US workers, and you get your green card. If the business fails, you're in trouble. So make sure the business doesn't fail. In terms of geographic diversity, well, the only issue you have is if you want to be at the lower amount of 500,000, you have to be in a TEA. But since it's your own money, maybe you'll invest $1 million anyway, because it's going to be very hard to create 10 jobs with 500,000, and you don't have to go into a high unemployment or rural area. So you can choose your area, but in that instance, it's $1 million. You say, well, Bernie, what's the big deal? I get $1 million investment. Why are you doing this webinar? Well, as of 2 weeks ago, it was 1.8 million. So the $1 million is a huge discount. For those who are not as high net worth, it's reduced from 900 down to 500. But for the regular EB5, it was 1.8 million being reduced down or back to 1 million. So it seems like a pretty good deal. Now, pooled direct investment. This is absolutely permissible. I'm not sure if Patrick has dived into this, but here we have a situation where maybe 5 people put $1 million each. We have to create 50 jobs. Maybe one of them doesn't want a green card. We only need 40 jobs with 5 million. So this is where a group of investors gets together. And obviously, you have more leverage in terms of what you can do. Some businesses, $1 million is going to be a small business. So pool direct investment is potentially problematic. Did I say potentially problematic? Potentially viable. So what about using a pooled investment to buy a troubled business? Again, the number one issue is, has this business lost 20% of its net income during the preceding 2 years? Well, how many businesses have lost 20% of net income during the preceding 2 years? Is it 50% of American businesses? For those of you who are entrepreneurial, look at the opportunities here. There are so many troubled businesses. But again, do your due diligence. I mean, who wants to invest in a troubled business? I don't know. But driving around Santa Monica yesterday, I saw there were tons of businesses that have closed down. So the potential to invest in a troubled business, resurrect, is tremendous. And here we don't have to hire 10 new workers. We are merely securing the jobs of the previous employees, saving jobs. I spoke a little bit about this management concept. Some people will argue that it's the same as a regional center. My feeling is the individual has to be a little bit more hands-on, but a limited partnership will work from a structural point of view. Exit strategies. Well, this is more complicated, but until such time as the 829 or removal of conditions has been approved, I would caution against exiting or seeking to exit. As for providing a new commercial enterprise, if you look at the rules, when they say if you buy an existing business and you expand the net worth or number of employees by 40%, you're okay. Not true. The regulations are terrible. 40% expansion does not mean you're safe. You have to basically create 10 new jobs in addition to the 40% expansion, and you have to reorganize and restructure the business such that there's a new business. This is the biggest headache I have with direct. People call me and say, I just bought a business. And I say, well, are you going to reorganize, restructure, and create a new business? They say, of course I am, but they don't. So you really have to change the fundamental nature. I am very nervous about touching any Eb5 case where people are purchasing existing businesses. So proving that it's new is huge. This is the problem of multiple TEAs. The business has to be principally located within the framework of the TEA. I already mentioned that they cannot sell or refinance prematurely. That can impact the business. The other thing about Eb5, which is kind of stupid, is that until the individual has their green card, meaning that until they've landed with the green card, material changes are not allowed. So you have a business plan. In business, we always make changes to accommodate the needs of our clients in the economy, but they don't allow that. It's kind of stupid. Once you have your green card, however, then change to the business can be made. But this kind of silly rule, but you better follow it. These are the issues you need to be aware of. The amount of the investment, is it $1 million? Is it $500,000? Have you got adequate jobs to create? What is the future of the Eb5 program? Well, for direct, it's simple. For regional center, we need to wait for the enactment. When to file? Well, that's the issue of have you invested the full amounts? My view is I would consider a partial investment, but only if the funds have been identified and we are seeking to transfer them. So if, for example, the money is coming out of India and we can only bring out a certain amount every year, but we've got it in a bank account and it's but for currency regulations, the full amount would have been invested. But there's danger that the case would be denied or rejected because the full amount hasn't been invested. What about quota retrogression? Well, for Chinese, we definitely have a big problem. Multiple year wait. For Vietnamese, it's got a little bit better. For India, it's still going to hit us on the head. What about processing times? At the moment, the government's taking over 2 years to get a 526 petition approved. Another 6 to 12 months before you get interviewed. So realistically, from the time you start until you land, based on current processing times, close to 3 years. Then you've got a 2-year wait. Now we're up to 5 years. And then you file your 829. Those are also taking 2 or 3 years. Now you're up to 7 or 8 years. So this is a huge commitment. In almost every instance, your money is going to be irrevocably committed for a lengthy period of time, usually at least 8 years or longer. You need to be managing the business. You need to be qualified to manage the business. How long will it take for conditions to be removed? Redeployment mainly applies in the regional center context. Now, Patrick does about 10 or 12 E's every month. Patrick is very well established with the E's. Now, one of the big questions when you do an E is that lawyer thinking about Eb5? Is the lawyer thinking about TA issues? Do they have adequate source of funds? This is the problem. People come to me with an E and say, I invested 5 years ago. And I'm like, all right, let's do the source of funds. We can't prove where the money came from. Well, the money came from a corporation, not from an individual. No Eb5. In which case I'll tell them, sorry, we can't convert that E2 to Eb5. We have to start a new business. So did the money come from the individual or did it come from the company? We have the issue of the business plan. Were the jobs already created by the time you put the money in? Starting a new company versus acquisition of a new company, I've already answered. I like to start a new company. So, importance of consular processing on Form I-526. That's a minor technical issue, but it's an important one because the E2 is a temporary visa. So I get this question all the time. If I file for Eb5, can I renew my E2? Well, it depends. You still have to show that you have an unrelinquished domicile abroad for an E2, provided you don't indicate that you plan to adjust in the US. In almost every case, I believe we can show temporariness on an E2, even though we filed for an Eb5. So there's quite a few tricks to converting an E2 to an Eb5. There's quite a few rules that need to be followed. Purchasing a troubled business. I mentioned that I think there's potential here. How do you find the troubled business? I can't say I'm going to recommend any business brokers.
It takes 1 to 2 years, according to Harvard Business Review, to find and do due diligence on the right business.
Wow.
Like an existing business.
So there you go.
It takes less time to sell. On average, you sell a business in less than 6 months, but to buy an existing business, 1 to 2 years.
And I would say that is really good advice, Patrick. Do due diligence. People buy existing businesses and then they find it doesn't work. But if you do qualify and you can find one, we need a loss of 20% in the net worth prior to the loss. So 20% decrease in the net worth. I think that there are a lot that are going to qualify, but finding a good one and must maintain no less than the pre-investment level of employees. So if you had 15, you've got to keep 15. If you had 9, I don't think you're going to qualify. So purchasing a troubled business may be an option. I think I'm going to pass on that. Rules for the employees. Now, job sharing is allowed. It's complicated. You need to have clear contract, but 2 part-time jobs doesn't equal a full-time job. Bernie, what you said sounds inconsistent. I know, but we can structure it such that job sharing is permissible, but part-time jobs are not. When do the jobs have to be created? Well, that's never quite clear. Do the jobs have to exist for 5 years? No. Possibly 2 years. Here's what I can tell you. At the time we filed the 829, I must have 10 full-time employees. Finished. I must have 10 full-time employees as verified by I-9s, W-2s, tax returns, etc. At the time we file the removal of conditions, which is 3 or 4 years down the road. Do we need to have 10 at the time we file the 526? No. Would it be nice? Yes. Do we need to have 2 or 3? I like to see some employees initially. All right. Some of the other problems, if the individual's in the US on a B visa, they can't really manage the business. They can set up the business. If they have an E2 country passport, 81 countries, I believe, then they can do it on an E2. If they don't, we can talk about acquiring a second passport. The Grenada passport is very popular. The Turkish passport, also about 250,000. Grenada passport's cheaper. And with those passports, you can get an E2, and then that would allow you to come in within a few months. Look at the tax issues. Investors are always shocked to discover that if you have a green card, you're taxable on worldwide income. Tax planning is required. So I am going to now give Patrick the opportunity to present. I will encourage you to, I see we have quite a few questions here. Let me click on to Patrick's picture, and I'm going to move to the chat column. Introduce yourself, take it away, and explain to us how you can help us with Direct EB5, Patrick, and possibly even mention E2, because I think quite a few of the people on this call will be
a lot of people using the E2 as a bridge.
Correct.
It's a great entryway in the US, and then it's Bernie's job to figure out the best green card path. For many of our clients, it's not the EB5, but for some of our clients, it is the EB5. So we'll let Bernie decide what the best green card option is for you, or if the EB5 or E2 makes the most sense. But who Visa franchises and vetted biz? My brother and I started Visa franchise back in 2015. My experience was in finance. I worked at JP Morgan as well as a consultant in a small private equity fund. And then my brother worked for the parent company of Burger King, which owns Popeyes and Tim Hortons. So I discovered the E2 visa because I was working at a regional center with actually EB5, doing investments in hospitality and franchising. And I discovered the E2 visa, and Jack and I thought that it was a good option for franchising, made good sense for the E2 visa. And along the years, we've had a few EB5 direct cases, but most of our practice has been on the E2, as that made the most sense for our clients. However, now, given the regional center program being canceled, as well as the investment amount going down to 500K, we've basically restructured the offering we've always had with the EB5 direct practice to really scale that up. And we have a great network of franchisors together with your attorney, immigration attorney, and franchise/corporate attorney need to be involved. Can be a good fit for your immigration investment objective. So we advise over 400 plus clients from all over the world. We've never had a denial on a second attempt, but we have had a few clients that didn't have a signed lease and just had a letter of intent, or it wasn't a substantial investment for the E2. They tried to invest like $70,000, denied first time, reapplied with a higher investment, signed lease, and they got approved. So pretty near perfect track record. This should actually say, 100% if there was a second attempt. Our clients have created over 2,000 jobs in the US, which is pretty impressive. And about 2.5 years ago, we came up with the idea of vetted biz. I kept getting asked, what are the options? What franchises? What industry? We're like, let's put everything online. So we've been in that process for the last 2 years. And I'll go through the portal briefly, but there's 1,800 franchises, Our analysts are doing an update based on the 2020 franchise disclosure document on every publicly available franchise. So all the information's there. I can share examples, but pretty much every franchise that's publicly available is available on Vetted Biz. And we reviewed 1.1 million small business administration loans, which is the vehicle that most Americans finance a franchise or business acquisition, to see the default rate across different industries. I'll go quickly through that, but pros and cons franchise, I won't touch too much on the immigration aspects, but franchise, initial ongoing support, you have a plan and you execute. So it's not going to vary so much from the plan. The franchisor can help out with a lot of different business functions. There's negatives though, costs associated with gaining the franchise rights. You pay that initial fee, there's ongoing fees, restrictions imposed by the franchisor. Independent business, it's great, operational, oftentimes profitable. You have the historic financials. However, there's a lot of fraud. A lot of people aren't declaring their earnings on their tax returns. And I've heard crazy cases where someone's buying a business, their E2, this is a real case, buying their business for the E2 visa, $400K investment. The guy is only declaring $50K in profit and $100,000 in cash. And there's only 2 employees on the books and another 13 that are not on the books. Maybe this doesn't happen as much in Santa Monica, but the reality is in South Florida, this is the operating norm for some people. So when you're buying an independent business, you need to have your accountant, your corporate attorney by your side to evaluate it and make sure that you're not buying a liability. But you can find great opportunities. I mentioned that Harvard Business Review podcast that 20 minutes ago. It takes 1 to 2 years, and it's going to take a lot more time, but you can find a great opportunity. And startup's awesome. You can grow the business fast, sell the business, but you lose the visa. The business can crash fast and you start something else, you lose the visa. So the business is mega successful. Someone wants to buy you out for a crazy valuation, you lose the visa. 20% of businesses with employees fail in the first year, and it's 50% in the first 5 years. So also, startups during the crisis, you could lay off, during the pandemic, you could lay off employees, where a franchise that's growing at a reasonable rate, you're not just going to fire all your employees one fell swoop. Where a startup, it might make more sense. It's really important to identify what kind of investor you are. Have you already made it? Do you have significant assets? Do you make a lot of money abroad, 200, 300,000 plus? Is your time very valuable? So that would be more of a lifestyle investor where they prioritize working less hours in the business. Initial investment, Eb5, 500 to 900K. Longevity of the business is the most important factor, as well as the exit opportunity to sell the business once they get the permanent green card. Strategic and financial investor, 500K to million plus. Yes, the visa eligibility is important, but a major focus is on return on investment. And then aims to build the business up, multiple locations, potentially acquire competition, willing to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And location for these investors is important, but it's often secondary to strong earnings and strong growth potential. So those are important factors to consider. Some other items, financials of the business. 60% of franchisors disclose their financials in the franchise disclosure document. Business longevity is really important. I want to see franchises that have been around at least 5 years, ideally 20 plus years. Ways to reduce the upfront investment, important for a lot of our clients. I'm going to have to work closely with Bernie on the immigration side there to make sure it's compliant for the Eb5. Franchisor support, how are they helping you build the business? Can they hire a manager? Could you have an operational support contract with the franchisor for 2 to 3 years while your Eb5 visa is adjudicating? These are all things that are really important to consider when looking at franchises. Location, TA, but you have professionals to sort that out. Florida is relatively easy, or at least it was last time we asked for TA letters. We would get them back in 24 hours. Job numbers, 10 plus full times, you really need to have a healthy cushion. So 12, 13, where it makes operational sense, to have those jobs. So not a good fit for EB5. Business services, seasonal services like tax services, barbershops. California might be a little different because a lot of nail salons and barbershops now have W-2, where it's an actual employee. But Texas, Florida is still generally contractors. So beauty is not a great fit. Cleaning, not a great fit. However, fast food tends to have a good amount of employment. Healthcare, for me, it's the best in terms of the number of jobs. Per capital deployed, you're going to have a lot of employees for home care and those type of businesses. Education, childcare has a lot of employees. Real estate, it can't be passive. Property management could work. Not going to have as many jobs as healthcare or education, but it can work because you can have a bunch of cleaners, for example, if you're doing a real estate property management, but you're going to have 50, 60, 80 plus vacation rentals under management to justify 10 plus jobs. And pet care. We've had a few clients invest in pet hotels, and pet ownership in the US has skyrocketed during the pandemic. So those are 5 industries to consider. Again, vetted biz. We always hear about the big names. Oh, Patrick, I want to invest in Subway. Okay, do you know, Subway is not that great of a franchise. They haven't done so well over the past years. And you can see pretty much for 1,800 franchises, we have the data of failure, openings. So Subway, maybe for EB5, if they allowed it, but I think you already have to have a US green card already. Nearly 20% of Subways failed in the last 3 years. You have 1,000 closing every year. Big brands like Chick-fil-A won't work. The investment amount's $5,000 and then Chick-fil-A corporate does the rest. Large franchises like Burger King, where my brother worked, you usually have to open up 10. So if you have 5 million and generally US restaurant experience, we can look at these big brands. We had a client that had 5 million and we looked at all the big brands. So we're very flexible in our approach. Out of 10 investors, 8 of them invest in different franchises. It's important to look at the industry as a whole. So our approach, bottom up and top down. So from the industry side, for food, if there's 8 food restaurants that got loans or the owners got loans to operate a food restaurant, 1 failed and wasn't able to pay the loan back. And this is from 44,000 non-franchise businesses. Franchises for food did a little better, 9-1. But I don't love those odds if you're investing a good amount of your net worth in a business as well as your green card. So food, there are some great options available, and you have to look at the business in terms of how the industry is done, yes, but also how the individual franchisees performed over the last 5 to 10 years to see how successful the business has been. Healthcare, on the other hand, it's nearly basically double the success. US people in small businesses we see are making money in more complicated things like healthcare, or things that people hate to do, like junk removal. There's a very profitable business that just is you're removing junk. And so you can see the failure rate is actually a little higher for franchises for healthcare. But if you look at the best 10%, it's going to be better than a non-franchise healthcare businesses. Retail products and services, depending on the opportunity, there's a lot of jobs. However, it's not as secure as some of the other industries, but a lot of jobs. Real estate's 21-1, 2 to 3 times as successful as food. And for the franchise side, 26-1. So 26 businesses open and take government loans to operate their business, and 1 fails. I like those odds a lot better than food at 9-1 for a franchise concept. So again, real estate's complicated for EB5, not ideal for EB5, But from an investment side, operating a business, they're great opportunities. And we've had 30 plus clients for the E2 do real estate property management. And a few right now are looking to transition into EB5 to see if it makes sense with their current investment or the one that they're in the process of investing in. All right. So a couple of things to keep in mind. We can move fast. We have about 10 E2 visa clients a month, but we can get it. When we're at capacity, we're at capacity. So we have a limit in terms of the number of clients that we're taking in. We're keeping it right now at 10 per month. So if you're interested in it, we're only working with people that have already consulted and or engaged an immigration attorney. If you already engage an immigration attorney, we're happy to give you a slight discount to our fee because it's going to make the process a lot smoother. And don't ask me about visa questions. I want to focus just on the franchise and the business and let the franchise legal and the immigration legal for the attorneys. But it's basically a 10-step process where we're with you every step of the way. And it can be as little as 8 weeks. A big variable is going to be conversations with franchisees and working with the attorneys on documenting from an investment side, the franchise agreement, as well as filing the I-526 petition. Bernie emphasized due diligence. We're the same way. So you got to have your team of advisors with you, including the corporate / franchise attorney. And then you got to talk to at least 5 franchisees, understand their financials, ask for P&Ls, how they've been doing the last few years, how did they do during the pandemic. A lot of the franchisors we work with that adapted quickly even did better in 2020 than 2019. Those that weren't able to adapt quickly were hit really hard from this last pandemic. So that's a general process of how we work. A couple businesses in the healthcare space, we've had 2 clients invest with success on the spectrum, which is applied behavioral analysis for children with autism. So this is a very job intensive business where essentially it's 1 child, 1 therapist that's full time. And if you do a lot of pre-marketing beforehand with one of these centers, you could potentially have already 20 kids signed up by the time you open up, and then you have to get to work hiring those therapists. So a big part is recruiting and hiring the analysts, supervising the workers, reviewing the overall financials and marketing. And this is a type of job, these centers, you could work 20 to 30 hours a week and have a full-time manager that's managing the staff. I like this industry is very hot. This is the only franchise in the space doing this. Most of it's done by mom and pop and some private equity funds. There can be substantial exit opportunities if you get the business up to $1 million, $2 million plus. And many states now are paying for these programs, which can be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 per kid per month. So we like this business. We just have to work with Bernie to structure it appropriately for EB5, because you're going to spend the money in the first year, most likely year and a half, to get to that $500K with the staff. But initially you have the franchise fee, $35K. You have different fees here, basically for operating the business for the first 4 months, $30K. Leasehold improvements, making the space better. So that can get you to say $400K, $450, and then you're going to have additional working capital needed to pay those 15, 20 plus therapists. Historic financials, you can see steadily goes up. They dipped down a little bit during the pandemic, and this is for the average on 2 of their locations, but above $1 million, and it's a pretty healthy profit margin. Not necessarily for SOS, but this industry is 15 to 25% when the owner's involved in the business. So that's an example. It could potentially work for EB5. We'd have to work with Bernie and see it. We're in the process of adapting different businesses that we've already had clients invest with for the E2 side, or in the process of investing. there's roughly 50 franchises that our clients have already invested in, and maybe 10 to 20 are good fits for the EB5. Another one would be a home care solution option, where they have an option that you can basically have an agreement with them to pay $1,500 to $2,500, depending on the performance of the franchise that you own 100% of. You own 100% of both these businesses. Want to emphasize that. And with this, it's a good bridge if you're not able to live right away in the United States, where they can run the business for you on a day-to-day basis while you're doing the back office work, financial strategy, et cetera, and having regular calls with the franchisor to review people issues, finances, et cetera. So those are two options that could work for the EB5. As I mentioned, very customized, and we can do the process in 90 days or less from the time we have our initial contact, from the time you make the investment in the franchise and file for, and basically ready to file for the I-526. That was it from my end. I guess we can turn it back to questions. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you, Patrick. That was really helpful. I met Patrick, gosh, how many? It's probably about 4 or 5 years ago already. Time flies.
Exactly, yeah.
And at the time, Patrick was the only one I am aware of who's providing the service. These guys are, him and his brother, I know them pretty well. They're straight shooters. They're good guys. Again, we've used the word due diligence. Bring your professionals, bring your investment specialists, bring your accountants. The thing that I really loved was this idea that it takes a year or so to do a proper due diligence on a business. And small businesses tend to, as Patrick said, not always declare everything. There's a question here, should we start an E2 before EB5? Well, because we don't know how long the EB5 is going to be at 500,000, I would say probably start them simultaneously. As Patrick mentioned, he can do the E2 in a period of a month or so. So I would move like lightning speed on the E2, get the EB5 ready for filing. I'd want to get the visa stamped in the passport before I file the EB5 if possible, but remember there are limitations in terms of the time. Would non-English speaker be able to invest in franchise as mentioned by Patrick? Yeah, I don't have a problem. There's no requirement to speak English to get a visa, but they will often ask you, how will you run the business? So if you don't speak English, presumably you will have a manager who is fluent in both languages. So
yeah, and from our side, fluent bilingual manager, or if you're dealing with the franchisor, you need to have a translator available within 48 hours command to jump in a meeting. The franchisor, it's a marriage. It's basically a 10-year contract. They need to communicate with you. So if they can't communicate with you, we have some franchisors that speak Spanish and clients that speak Spanish, and that's fine. But really, besides Spanish, you got to have a translator or that bilingual manager.
Thank you, Patrick. So, see, I'm probably going to just take a last question here. Can an investor change their status to E2 inside the US, avoiding going abroad? The answer is yes, if you're in the US in valid non-immigrant status. So if you're in the US on a B2 or B1 or even an F1 student visa, we can change your status in the United States. That approval would be valid for up to 2 years. When you leave the country, you then have to apply for a visa stamp at the consulate abroad, which is a brand new process. Folks, we've been going for over an hour. I see we've got a few people dropping off. So you will get this recording, share it with your friends. To reach Patrick, it's patrick@visafranchise.com. To reach me, it's bernard@wolfsdorf.com. Watch your mail next week. The green card will be arriving in an official envelope. Sorry, that's my standard bad, silly joke. The green card will not be arriving in the mail next week, but hopefully it will be arriving in the mail in 2 or 3 years' time, and we can all have a big green card party and celebrate. But the one thing that I do want to mention as well is the economy seems to be picking up. We seem to be going through an extreme boom time. Real estate in Southern California was up 20% in the month of April alone compared to last year. The stock market is what, at 34,000? It's insane. Maybe too high already, but I think with all the capital that's being pumped into the US economy, this is a good time to open a business. I think people want to get out and live again. So for those of you who are interested, if you have immigration questions, email me, Bernard@Wolfsdorf. We have 160 staff, 43 attorneys, 7 offices throughout the United States. And you'll find our team willing, able, and qualified to help. And if you need help with selecting a business, Patrick's a good guy to start with. Don't make it easy on him, kick him hard. He likes it. I know that because I do. But you want to make sure that your investment is safe. But these guys have been straight shooters in the past, and I expect them to be so in the future. So Patrick, thank you again for
thank you. Appreciate you and your team for putting this together so quickly.
Yeah,
like, what, in 5 days?
We did this in about 4 or 5 days. We wanted to be out there quickly because I don't know how long the 500,000 Eb5 will last. It could be 1 week, it could be 2 weeks, but what I do know is that we could file an Eb5 at 500,000 for you tomorrow. We'd have to put a good business plan together, but the bottom line is that's going to go back up to at least 900,000 relatively soon. On that dire note, I wish you all a good fortune and look forward to hearing from you. Patrick, come and visit me again soon in LA, and we will talk soon and look forward to working with you.
Appreciate it.
Adios, everyone.